Today, we bring you a story that sits at the treacherous intersection of ambition, technology, and unimaginable ruthlessness. It's a chilling reminder that the brightest stars in the corporate world can sometimes cast the darkest shadows, and that empires praised for their innovation can be built on foundations of fraud and blood. Before we access this encrypted file of a story, please ensure you've hit that subscribe button and activated your notifications. You won't want to miss a single revelation. Now, prepare yourselves. We're about to expose the deadly source code behind a titan of industry. This is the case of the blood-built empire. The body of Ben Carter was found at dawn, slumped over the steering wheel of his nondescript sedan in a parking garage overlooking the steel and glass canyons of the financial district. To the casual observer, it might have looked like a heart attack, a man who had worked too late and whose body had simply given up. But Detective Isabella Rossi saw the truth in the details, the small, discordant notes that broke the harmony of a natural death. The single, impossibly neat hole in the back of Carter's skull, obscured by the headrest, was the first. The second was the complete lack of any personal effects: no wallet, no phone, no keys. The third, and most unsettling, was the laptop on the passenger seat. It was still on, its screen displaying a single, ominous sentence on a blank document. Some secrets are worth more than money. It was a scene scrubbed clean of identity but screaming with intent. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was an execution and a message. Detective Marcus Thorne, Izzy's longtime partner, let out a low whistle as the forensics team worked around the car. "Professional," he grunted, his voice a gravelly counterpoint to the quiet hum of the garage. "Clean entry, clean exit. Our guy wasn't just a journalist, he was a ghost. We can't even find his damn home address yet." Ben Carter, they soon learned from a distraught editor at the independent news outlet Veritas Weekly, was indeed a ghost. He was an investigative journalist of the old school, a man who lived off the grid and guarded his sources with a paranoid devotion. For the past 6 months, he had been working on one story, and one story alone: a deep dive into the untouchable corporate behemoth, Aura Innovations. Aura was more than just a company in the city of Sterling. It was a secular religion. Founded a decade earlier by the charismatic prodigy Evelyn Reed, Aura had revolutionized the world of data analytics and predictive AI. Their proprietary software, Prometheus, was everywhere. It managed city traffic grids, optimized hospital patient flows, predicted stock market fluctuations, and powered the logistics of global shipping. The company's public image was flawless. Aura was a beacon of progress and philanthropy, and Evelyn Reed was its high priestess. Evelyn was a media darling, a visionary with a story that was the stuff of legend. She was the orphan who had taught herself to code in a state-run home, the brilliant mind who had earned a scholarship to MIT, the entrepreneur who had built a billion-dollar empire from a garage with nothing but a revolutionary idea and an unshakable will. Her face graced the covers of business magazines. Her TED Talks on ethical innovation went viral, and her philanthropic foundation poured millions into education and urban renewal. To the world, she was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of intellect and determination. She was Sterling's golden child, and Carter was convinced she was a fraud. His editor, a weary man named David Chun, told them in his cluttered office. He said Aura wasn't a tech company. It was the most sophisticated financial scam in history. He claimed their profits, their stock valuation, their entire Prometheus platform was a house of cards built on fabricated data and phantom contracts. Did he have proof? Izzy asked, her mind already mapping the vast, intimidating fortress she would have to breach. Chun shook his head, running a hand through his thinning hair. Ben kept his work firewalled. He told me he was close, that he had a source inside, someone who could give him the final piece of the puzzle. He was supposed to meet that source last night. He never came back. The investigation began, and immediately hit a wall of polished granite. Serving a warrant on Aura Innovations was like laying siege to a modern-day castle. A team of sleek, impossibly expensive lawyers met them in a lobby that felt more like a modern art museum. They were polite, professional, and utterly obstructive. They provided employee lists and access to common areas, but all requests for financial records, server access, or executive schedules were stonewalled with practiced ease. Their first interview was with Evelyn Reed herself. They were ushered into her office, a stunning corner suite on the top floor of the Aura Tower, offering a panoramic view of the city she now dominated. The room was a masterpiece of minimalist design: white marble, chrome, and glass. There was no clutter, no personal photos, just a single, perfect orchid on a vast, empty desk. It was a room that radiated power and control. Evelyn Reed rose to greet them. She was tall and poised, with sharp, intelligent eyes the color of slate and dark hair pulled back into a severe, elegant chignon. She wore a tailored suit that cost more than Thorne's car, but she moved with an unnerving stillness, a predatory grace. Her expression was one of carefully calibrated concern. "Detectives, this is a terrible tragedy," she said, her voice smooth and measured, a voice accustomed to commanding boardrooms and captivating audiences. "Mr. Carter was a known critic of our company, but violence is never the answer. We will, of course, cooperate with your investigation in any way we can. We believe he was meeting a source from your company on the night he was killed," Thorne said bluntly, trying to pierce her corporate armor. Evelyn's expression didn't flicker. "We have over 5,000 employees in this building, detective. Many of them, I'm sure, have their own opinions. But I can assure you that our corporate culture is one of loyalty and integrity. The idea that one of our own would be involved in something so gruesome is unthinkable." She answered all their questions with the same unflappable calm. She spoke of Aura's mission, of their commitment to transparency, of the smear campaigns they often faced from competitors and conspiracy theorists. She was a flawless performer, her script perfect. As she spoke, Izzy felt a strange chill. It wasn't just that she was guarded. It was that she seemed entirely unreal, as if she were a hyper-realistic AI of her own design, running a program titled Concerned CEO. They left with nothing but a list of employees and a deep sense of unease. They spent the next 2 weeks interviewing dozens of Aura employees, from high-level executives to cafeteria workers. All of them repeated the same company line. Aura was a family, and Evelyn Reed was a visionary leader who inspired absolute devotion. They were a cult of personality, and their faith was unshakable. The idea that there could be a whistleblower, a Judas, in their midst was met with universal disbelief. The trail to Ben Carter's source and his killer had gone cold inside the impenetrable walls of the Aura Tower. While Thorne's team focused on the physical evidence or lack thereof, Izzy began a deep dive into the digital breadcrumbs of Ben Carter's life. She pieced together his last few weeks from encrypted emails, fragmented hard drives, and whispers from other journalists. Carter had been obsessed with Aura's finances. He was convinced that the Prometheus AI, the engine of their success, wasn't generating the miraculous profits the company claimed. He believed the money was coming from somewhere else, a vast, hidden network of shell corporations and offshore accounts. Just as the case was in danger of being relegated to the cold case files, a second body turned up. The victim was a young man named Leo Martinez. He was found in his small, cluttered apartment in a working-class neighborhood, dead from what the ME initially ruled as a fentanyl overdose. Martinez was a low-level data analyst at a financial firm that managed a small portion of Aura's investment portfolio. On the surface, his death had no connection to the high-profile execution of a journalist. He was a tragic statistic in the city's ongoing opioid crisis. But one detail caught the attention of a sharp-eyed patrol officer. Martinez was a recovering addict who had been clean for 3 years. He was a sponsor for other addicts, a vocal advocate for recovery programs. His apartment showed no signs of Arelipsino needles, no paraphernalia. The only thing out of place was a single, fresh needle mark in his arm. It looked like he had been injected. Thorne was ready to dismiss it as a tragic but unrelated case. "Izzy, the kid was a junkie. They fall off the wagon. It happens. It's got nothing to do with our journalist, doesn't it?" Izzy countered, her eyes scanning the preliminary report. Leo Martinez worked at Sterling Financial. They handle investments for Aura. Ben Carter was investigating Aura's finances. Martinez's job was to analyze financial data. Maybe he saw something. Maybe he was Carter's source. It was a long shot, a connection based on little more than a hunch. But it was the only thread they had. Izzy's team descended on Sterling Financial. They were a world away from the polished fortress of Aura's chaotic, high-stress environment of ringing phones and caffeine-fueled traders. They interviewed Martinez's colleagues, who described him as a quiet, brilliant analyst, a number cruncher who could see patterns no one else could. They also discovered something crucial. In the week before his death, Leo Martinez had been working unusually late, running complex queries on the Aura Innovations account, far beyond the scope of his normal duties. He had told a coworker he thought he'd found a ghost in the machine, a series of transactions that didn't make sense. The day before he died, he had copied a massive amount of data onto an external hard drive. That hard drive was missing from his apartment. The two murders were now linked by a fragile, invisible thread. One man was killed for asking questions, the other for finding the answers. The killer wasn't just silencing a journalist. They were meticulously erasing every trace of a secret buried deep inside the financial code of Aura Innovations. Izzy felt she was standing at the edge of a digital ocean, knowing that a monstrous truth was lurking in its depths. The message from Carter's laptop echoed in her mind. Some secrets are worth more than money. The more she learned, the more she believed this wasn't just about fraud. The neatness of the killings, the professional precision, the cold, corporate efficiency of the cover-up. It all pointed to a rot that went far deeper than cooked books. The investigation had now shifted. They weren't just hunting for a killer. They were hunting for a ghost, a digital phantom hidden in the complex architecture of Evelyn Reed's empire. Izzy knew that to catch this ghost, she couldn't attack the fortress from the outside. She had to find a way in, a crack in the gilded facade. She went back to the list of Aura's 5,000 employees, her eyes scanning the names, the job titles, the years of service. She was looking for something out of place, a discordant note in the corporate symphony. Most of the senior executives had been with Evelyn Reed since the beginning, a loyal inner circle. But as she scrolled through the middle management names, one stood out. Her name was Sarah Jenkins. She was a project manager in the logistics division. According to her file, she had been with the company for 8 years. But when Izzy ran a cross-check, she found something odd. Sarah Jenkins had resigned from her position 6 months ago, citing personal reasons. And then, she had disappeared. Her apartment was empty, her social media accounts were deleted, and her family hadn't heard from her in months. 6 months ago, the exact time Ben Carter had started his investigation into Aura. Izzy felt a surge of adrenaline. Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a former employee. She was the first crack. She was the potential source who had gotten spooked and vanished. She was the one person who had been inside the machine and had decided to run. The problem was, if the detectives had found her name, it was almost certain that the people who had killed Carter and Martinez had found it too. The search for a missing person had just become a race to find a witness before she became the third victim. The gilded facade of Aura Innovations was beginning to show the faintest of cracks, and Izzy knew that if she could just pry one loose, the entire blood-built empire might come crashing down. The search for Sarah Jenkins began as a whisper and quickly escalated into a silent, desperate scream. She had vanished with the thoroughness of a master spy. Her digital footprint had been systematically erased. Her credit cards were inactive, her bank account untouched. It was as if she had stepped out of her life and simply evaporated. For Thorne, this was confirmation that she was either already dead or in deep hiding. For Izzy, it was proof that Sarah Jenkins was terrified of something far more organized and powerful than a common criminal. The detectives split their focus. Thorne's team worked the physical world, chasing down old addresses, interviewing estranged family members, and speaking to former neighbors. They painted a picture of a quiet, unassuming woman. Sarah was described as diligent, intelligent, but intensely private. She was a worker bee, not a leader, someone content to stay in the background. She was the last person anyone would expect to be at the center of a deadly corporate conspiracy. Meanwhile, Izzy lived in the digital world, trying to resurrect the ghost of Sarah's online presence. She enlisted the help of the department's top cybercrime analyst, a brilliant but socially awkward hacker named Finn. Together, they spent days sifting through the digital ashes of Sarah's life, looking for any surviving spark. They analyzed old server backups, scoured the dark web for mentions of her name, and tried to piece together fragmented data trails. It was Finn who found the first real clue. He managed to recover a deleted email from Sarah's work account, sent from her personal address a week before she disappeared. It was sent to Ben Carter's encrypted email. The message was short and cryptic. "You're right about the numbers. It's worse than you think. The foundation is rotten. I have proof, but I need to be careful. They see everything." "The foundation is rotten," Izzy repeated, staring at the words on the screen. She wasn't talking about the company's finances. She was talking about its origin. This email was their Rosetta Stone. It confirmed that Sarah was Carter's source, confirmed that she had evidence, and it confirmed that she was deathly afraid of a surveillance network within Aura. They see everything. This discovery intensified the pressure on the investigation and on Evelyn Reed. Armed with a direct link between a missing person and a murdered journalist, the DA's office was finally able to secure a high-level warrant, giving Izzy and Finn Limited supervised access to some of Aura's financial servers. What they found was a digital labyrinth, a masterpiece of obfuscation. The company's books were, on the surface, immaculate. But beneath the pristine exterior lay a dizzying network of shell corporations, offshore holding companies, and automated microtransactions designed to move money in a constant, untraceable flow. It was like trying to catch a single drop of water in a raging river. "This isn't just accounting," Finn marveled, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "This is art. Every phantom contract is balanced by a dozen legitimate ones. Every inflated asset is hidden behind layers of real investments. It's designed to pass any standard audit. Whoever built this is a genius, a ruthless genius." As they dug deeper, they began to see the patterns Leo Martinez must have seen. They found ghost employees on the payroll of subsidiary companies, individuals with social security numbers that didn't exist, whose salaries were funneled into untraceable cryptocurrency accounts. They found massive payments made to consulting firms that were nothing more than P.O. boxes in the Cayman Islands. The fraud was vast, systemic, and had been running for years. Aura Innovations wasn't just a house of cards. It was a digital mirage, projecting an image of immense wealth while hiding a hollow core. The profits from Prometheus were a lie. The company's true business was money laundering on an epic scale. But even this discovery didn't explain the murders. White-collar criminals went to great lengths to cover their tracks, but professional hits were another level of depravity. The risk was too great. Why kill a journalist, a data analyst, and hunt a project manager over a financial scam, however large? "Because it's not just about the money," Izzy insisted during a late-night strategy session with Thorne. Sarah said the foundation is rotten. She wasn't talking about what the company is doing now. She was talking about how it began. The investigation pivoted again, turning from Aura's present to Evelyn Reed's past. They re-examined her official biography, the inspiring story of the orphan who coded her way to the top. On the surface, it was perfect. But like her company's books, when they started to scratch away the polish, they found inconsistencies. They traveled to the state-run home where Evelyn grew up. The staff remembered her as fiercely intelligent, but also isolated and intensely secretive. She wasn't just an orphan. She was a foundling, left on the steps of a church as an infant with no name and no history. She was a blank slate, a person who had seemingly willed herself into existence. Next, they dug into her time at MIT. Her academic record was stellar, but socially, she was an enigma. She had no close friends, belonged to no clubs. She spent all her time in the computer labs. Her professors recalled her brilliance, but also a chilling lack of empathy, a mind that saw people and relationships as systems to be analyzed and manipulated. The most significant discovery came from an old roommate, a woman now working as a software engineer in California. She remembered Evelyn being obsessed with a single, brilliant classmate. His name was Michael Chin. Michael was the real genius, the roommate told Izzy over a video call. Evelyn was smart, but Michael, he was on another plane. He was the one who was developing the core concepts for a predictive AI. He called it Cassandra. He and Evelyn were inseparable. They weren't dating, it was more like she was studying him. They were supposed to start a company together after graduation. But they never did. According to university records, Michael Chun had died tragically just a month before graduation. He was an avid rock climber, and he'd had a fatal accident during a solo climb in the nearby mountains. His death was ruled an accident, a case of equipment failure. After Michael's death, Evelyn Reed seemed to disappear for a year. When she reemerged, she was in Sterling, founding a new company called Aura Innovations. The core of her new company was a revolutionary predictive AI she called Prometheus. A cold dread settled over Izzy. Cassandra. Prometheus. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was the prophetess who was cursed to be never believed. Prometheus was the titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. One was a story of ignored truth, the other of celebrated theft. "Get me the case file on Michael Chen's death," Izzy ordered Thorne, her voice low. "Every photo, every report, every interview. I don't care that it's over a decade old and from another state. Find it." While they waited for the file, Finn made another breakthrough. He had been trying to crack the encryption on a fragment of a file recovered from Ben Carter's shattered hard drive. He finally succeeded. The file contained a single audio recording. It was a clandestine recording of a conversation between Ben Carter and a terrified-sounding woman, Sarah Jenkins. "You don't understand." Sarah's voice trembled on the recording. "The company isn't built on code. It's built on a grave. I found the original project files, buried deep in a legacy server. The project name wasn't Prometheus. It was Cassandra, and the author wasn't Evelyn Reed." "Who was it?" Carter's voice asked. "Michael Chun," Sarah whispered. "She didn't write the code. She stole it. But that's not the worst part. I found her old financials from right after she left MIT. She was broke, in debt. 2 days after Michael died, his life insurance policy was paid out. A policy for $2 million. The sole beneficiary was his designated business partner, Evelyn Reed. Izzy felt the floor drop out from under her. The rotten foundation. It wasn't just stolen code. It was blood money. $2 million. The seed money that had started Aura Innovations. "She killed him?" Carter said on the recording, his voice a mixture of shock and dawning horror. "She killed him for his code and his money. And she used it to build an empire dedicated to predicting patterns." Sarah's voice was laced with bitter irony. "She knows how people think, how they'll react. She plans for every contingency. If she knows that I know, she'll find me. She'll erase me like a line of bad code." The recording ended there. It was the proof they needed, the motive that went beyond mere financial fraud. This was the secret Ben Carter had died for, the secret Leo Martinez had stumbled upon, and the secret that had sent Sarah Jenkins running for her life. Evelyn Reed wasn't just a fraud. She was a murderer, and had been from the very beginning. Her entire empire, her flawless reputation, her inspiring life story, it was all built on the murder of her only friend. The old case file on Michael Chen's death finally arrived. It was thin, the investigation perfunctory. A young man, a tragic accident. But looking at the crime scene photos with fresh, suspicious eyes, Izzy saw something the original investigators had missed. A small, almost invisible fray mark on the climbing rope, just above the point where it had snapped. The report said it was wear and tear. But to Izzy, who had taken a basic forensics course on textiles, it looked suspiciously like it had been deliberately weakened, sawed with a serrated blade until it was just strong enough to hold, but guaranteed to fail under pressure. They finally had the full, monstrous picture. Evelyn Reed was a predator who had identified a brilliant but naive partner, stolen his life's work, and then murdered him to fund the launch of her stolen empire. For over a decade, she had maintained a perfect facade. But Ben Carter's relentless digging had threatened to bring it all down. So she had reverted to her original method of problem-solving, elimination. She had hired a professional, a corporate fixer, to silence Carter, and then Martinez when he got too close. And now, that same fixer was undoubtedly hunting Sarah Jenkins. The investigation was no longer about uncovering a past crime. It was about preventing a future one. They had to find Sarah before the killer did. Izzy looked at the evidence laid out on the board: the two bodies, the missing woman, the ghost of a murdered student. The cracks in Evelyn Reed's foundation were no longer just visible. They were starting to split the entire edifice apart. Izzy knew their next move had to be perfect. Evelyn was a master of predicting patterns. She would already have a contingency plan for a police investigation. She would expect them to be looking for Sarah. To catch her, Izzy couldn't just follow the trail. She had to get inside Evelyn's head, to understand how she thought, and to predict the actions of a woman who saw the world as a complex algorithm where any variable that threatened the system had to be ruthlessly deleted. The cat-and-mouse game was about to enter its final, deadly phase. The hunt for Sarah Jenkins became a frantic, high-stakes chess match played across the city. Izzy knew that Evelyn Reed, a master of predictive analytics, would not only anticipate their moves, but would actively use their investigation against them. She would expect them to be tracing Sarah's digital and financial footprints, so any overt attempts would likely be monitored and used to lead them into a trap or, worse, lead Evelyn's killer directly to Sarah. "We have to go analog," Izzy declared to a skeptical Thorne and a wired Finn. "Evelyn thinks in algorithms and data streams. We need to find Sarah in a way her system can't predict." Instead of focusing on where Sarah might be, Izzy shifted her focus to why she would be there. "Sarah's not a spy," Izzy reasoned, pacing in front of the evidence board. "She's a project manager. She's methodical, organized, but she's not trained for this. She's terrified. When people are terrified, they don't run to a place that's clever. They run to a place that feels safe. A place with an emotional connection." They abandoned the digital hunt and returned to the physical one, but with a new perspective. They re-interviewed Sarah's estranged family, not asking where she was, but about her past. They asked about childhood memories, favorite places, family vacations, old friends. They built a psychological map of Sarah Jenkins, a map of her emotional anchor points. The breakthrough came from an elderly aunt living in a nursing home. She spoke of Sarah's childhood, of a quiet girl who loved books and solitude, and she mentioned a place. A small, secluded cabin on the shores of Lake Orion, about 3 hours north of the city. It had belonged to Sarah's grandparents and had been in the family for generations. It had been sold years ago after her grandparents passed away. "She loved that place," the aunt recalled wistfully. "She used to call it her fortress of solitude. She said she could hide from the whole world there." It was a long shot. The cabin had been sold. But on a hunch, Thorne dispatched a local sheriff's deputy to do a quiet drive-by. The report that came back sent a jolt of electricity through the team. The cabin had been bought by an anonymous LLC 2 years ago. The deputy noted that while the place looked dormant, he'd seen a thin wisp of smoke from the chimney the previous evening. "It's her," Izzy breathed. "She must have saved up and bought it back secretly. It's the one place in the world that is truly hers, off the grid, with no connection to her current life." The problem was, if they could find it, Evelyn could too. Her company, Aura, had access to databases and surveillance resources that dwarfed those of the police department. A simple search of property records linked to family names would eventually lead her to the same conclusion. They were in a race. Izzy made a critical decision. They would not go in with a full SWAT team. A large police presence would be easily detectable and could spook Sarah or alert the killer if they were already watching the area. Izzy and Thorne would go alone, in an unmarked car, posing as hikers. As they drove north through the dense forests, the serene landscape felt menacing, each shadow a potential threat. Izzy's mind was racing, trying to think like Evelyn. How would she handle this? She wouldn't just send a killer. That was messy. She was a planner, a strategist. She would have a contingency. They arrived at the trailhead near the lake and began the mile-long hike to the cabin. The silence of the woods was absolute, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the dry leaves. As they neared the clearing, they saw Ida's small, rustic log cabin, with that same telltale wisp of smoke curling from its stone chimney. They approached with caution, weapons drawn. Thorne took the back, while Izzy went to the front door. She knocked softly. "Sarah Jenkins? This is Detective Isabella Rossi with the Sterling Police Department. We're here to help you." There was a long silence, then the sound of a bolt being drawn. The door creaked open a few inches, and a pale, terrified face peered out. It was Sarah. She looked gaunt, her eyes wide with fear. "How did you find me?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You're not as invisible as you think," Izzy said gently. "We know everything. About Michael Chin. About the money. We need your testimony. We can protect you." Sarah hesitated, then slowly opened the door. Her cabin was sparse, with a small fire going in the hearth. On a simple wooden table lay a laptop and a collection of hard drives. It was the proof she had taken. "I knew they'd come for me," Sarah said, her body trembling. "He came here yesterday." Izzy and Thorne exchanged a look of alarm. "Who came here?" Thorne asked. "The lawyer. Aura's head of security. A man named Marcus Vance. He didn't threaten me, not really. He was polite. He offered me money. $10 million. And a new identity anywhere in the world. He said all I had to do was give him the data and disappear forever. He called it a retirement package." Izzy's blood ran cold. The contingency. Evelyn hadn't sent a killer. She had sent a negotiator. She was trying to buy the problem away, to turn her greatest liability into a manageable and deniable expense. Vance was no doubt a former intelligence operative, a professional fixer who could handle things quietly, whether with a briefcase full of money or a silenced pistol. "He gave me 24 hours to decide," Sarah said, her eyes welling with tears. "He's coming back. Tonight." Suddenly, the remote cabin no longer felt like a fortress. Felt like a trap. Izzy's radio crackled. It was Finn, his voice urgent. "Izzy, we've got a problem. A big one. Evelyn Reed just resigned as CEO of Aura. Effective immediately." She cited personal health reasons. "The board has already accepted it. She's cashing out. The final move." Evelyn was cutting herself off from the company. She was liquidating her assets, preparing to disappear. By the time the financial scandal broke, she would be a ghost, living on a private island with billions of dollars, while the board and her lawyers claimed she was a tragic victim of rogue employees. The murders of Carter and Martinez would remain unsolved, their connection to her officially severed. And if Sarah Jenkins were to disappear after accepting a payout, there would be no one left to contradict the official story. It was a perfect, diabolical exit strategy. "She's not running," Izzy realized aloud. "She's closing the loop. Vance isn't coming back with a briefcase tonight. He's coming back to erase the last piece of evidence. And that includes you, Sarah." They had only a few hours until dusk. They couldn't stay at the cabin. Vance would be expecting them there. Their only option was to hike out and try to get to safety. They gathered Sarah's evidence, and the three of them began the trek back to their car, constantly scanning the dense woods around them. As the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees, they heard it. The soft snap of a twig behind them. Thorne spun around, raising his weapon. There was nothing there, but they knew they were no longer alone. They were being hunted. The hike turned into a tense, desperate flight. They moved as quickly as they could, Sarah stumbling between the two detectives. They knew Vance was a professional, likely with military training and night vision equipment. He had all the advantages. They finally reached the parking area, a small, deserted patch of gravel at the edge of the forest. Their car was the only one there. As Thorne moved to unlock it, a shot rang out. It wasn't the loud crack of a rifle, but the soft pft of a silenced weapon. Thorne cried out and fell to the ground, clutching his leg. "Get her in the car!" he yelled, dragging himself behind the vehicle for cover. Izzy pushed a screaming Sarah into the passenger seat and slid into the driver's side. Another shot hit the windshield, creating a spiderweb of cracks. From the edge of the woods, a figure emerged, dressed in black, moving with a calm, deadly efficiency. It was Vance. Izzy started the car, an unfamiliar rental, her hands fumbling with the controls. She slammed it into reverse just as Vance raised his weapon again. She floored the accelerator, the car fishtailing on the gravel. Thorne, providing cover fire from behind the car, was exposed. "Leave me! Go!" he shouted. But Izzy wouldn't. In a split-second decision, she spun the wheel not away from the fight, but toward it. She drove the car directly at Vance, using the vehicle as a shield for Thorne. Vance was forced to dive out of the way, rolling into a ditch. The maneuver gave Thorne the precious seconds he needed to crawl and pull himself into the back seat. Izzy slammed the car into drive and sped away, tires squealing, leaving Vance behind in the darkness. The reckoning came not in a hail of bullets, but in the cold, quiet confines of the Aura Tower's top-floor office. While Thorne was being treated for his wound, Izzy, armed with Sarah Jenkins' testimony and her trove of incriminating data, went to face Evelyn Reed one last time. She found Evelyn not in a panic, but in a state of serene calm, packing a single, elegant briefcase. She looked up as Izzy entered, her expression not of surprise, but of weary resignation. It was the look of a chess master whose opponent had made an unexpected, brilliant move, forcing an inevitable checkmate. "Detective Rossi," Evelyn said, her voice betraying no emotion. "I suppose congratulations are in order. You were a more unpredictable variable than my models suggested." "It's over, Evelyn," Izzy said, her voice steady. "Vance failed. Sarah Jenkins is in protective custody. Her data is being analyzed by the FBI as we speak. The whole world is about to know what your foundation is built on." Evelyn slowly closed her briefcase and turned to face the vast window overlooking the city, her city. "I gave this city progress. I gave the world innovation. I created thousands of jobs. I built something magnificent. Does it really matter how the first brick was laid?" "It matters to Michael Chun," Izzy said quietly, "and to Ben Carter and Leo Martinez. They weren't variables in your algorithm, Evelyn. They were people." For the first time, a flicker of something raw and real crossed Evelyn's face. It was not remorse. It was anger. A deep, cold fury at the imperfection of it all, at the inconvenient, messy humanity that had brought her perfect system crashing down. "Michael was a dreamer, not a builder," she hissed, her voice losing its polished calm. "He would have squandered his genius. I gave it purpose. I created a legacy. I did what he never could. The others, they were threats to that legacy. Termites in the foundation. I simply fumigated." It was a full confession, delivered with the chilling detachment of a CEO discussing a hostile takeover. She saw no moral distinction between a business decision and the act of murder. They were both just forms of problem-solving. Evelyn Reed's empire did not fall with a bang. It dissolved in a flood of indictments, lawsuits, and media exposés. Her arrest was the lead story on every network for weeks. The woman who had been a symbol of innovation and hope was unmasked as a sociopathic predator. Her inspiring life story revealed to be a carefully crafted lie, written in fraud and blood. Weeks later, Izzy and a recovering Thorne stood on a balcony at police headquarters, looking out at the Aura Tower. The company's logo had already been removed, leaving a blank space on the skyline. "You know," Thorne said, leaning on his cane, "the scary part isn't that she was a monster. The scary part is that for over a decade, nobody noticed. Everybody bought the story." Izzy nodded, her gaze fixed on the empty tower. "Because it was a good story," she said. "People wanted to believe it. But empires built on lies, no matter how magnificent, eventually fall. All it takes is one person who is willing to keep digging until they hit the foundation." The story of Evelyn Reed became a dark legend in the corporate world, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. And for the detectives of the Sterling Police Department, it was a permanent reminder that the most dangerous monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes, they stand in the spotlight, hiding in plain sight, their gilded facades concealing a foundation of absolute darkness.